Hey everybody, this is my review of the Classics Illustrated version of the classic novel Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe. Now, this is supposedly one of the most influential novels in American history, but this is kind of difficult to read, and I'll get to that a little bit later. If you believe history books, I know not everybody does, but if you believe history books, this novel helped inspire the abolitionist movement in the North and the United States, which led to the Civil War, and not too many novels actually lead to change and reform and war, if you want to look at it that way. Plus, the term Uncle Tom comes from this book, and I'm not going to go into the significance of the term Uncle Tom because I do expect viewers to have some basic knowledge, and if you don't, well, that's what the internet is for. Now, unfortunately, some stereotypes that we see in popular entertainment today have come from this novel as well, and I won't get into those stereotypes. That's also for another video or content creator to do, but you'll probably recognize some of them in this comic book. Now, here's the cover, and this is a reprint, but the original came out in 1946. So I like the cover because it gives you different scenes from the book, and they're pretty accurate in that they're in the comic book, and you don't always get that from covers. So here we go. I think this is a pretty good splash page, contrasting a slave with the Declaration of Independence and then some exposition, which I think you can read from the picture. Now, this review, or my review, is going to focus on how well the comic book tells the story. I'll be honest, I haven't read the entire book, Uncle Tom's Cabin. I've read parts of it. It's like I said, it's not the easiest, most fun book to read. So if the comic book gets some minor details wrong, I'm not going to necessarily know about it. The thing is, I like good comic books, and I think most comic books aren't that good and they're wasted opportunities. I also think some of the classic comic books or graphic novels are a great way for interested people to get a feel for a novel without actually having to read it. All right, so here we have the benevolent slaveholder. And I know the word benevolent, it's all relative, I know that. He's in debt, so he has to sell some of his slaves. Now, a lesson here could be, don't take on too much debt or else it's going to come back on. I mean, don't have slaves either. I probably shouldn't laugh. But it's just that we don't have slaves now. And, I don't know. I mean, we kind of do. But a lot of that's because people take on too much debt. And, oh, man. I don't know. This review might cause some problems. All right, so we have Eliza. She decides she's going to flee to Canada with her son. They can pass as white, but Tom is going to stay. He can't pass as white. Haley, this is the slave traders. You see him here. He's mad. He's going to find her. And then one of the slaves sabotages the horse in the bottom panel. And I think so far the comic book does a good job of telling the story. I know some readers are going to have an issue with the dialect that's used in the word panels, the word balloons. I'm going to get to that a little bit later. All right, so the slaves are leading the slave trader, is that Haley, I think? They're leading him down the road intentionally to buy Eliza some time, and then she makes it to an inn. And okay, here's a slight problem, visual problem. Since the panels are kind of small, and it might be a little bit bigger on your screen depending on what size of screen that you're watching this on. If it's on your phone, you might have the same difficulty I am. But since the panels are small, even in the comic book, it's sometimes tough to tell which character is which. And I'm not talking about the black characters, all right? I'm not saying, oh, they all look alike to me. The white characters are tough to figure out, too. Okay, the pictures are small. The ink runs, all right? The comic, this reprint, it's still 50 years old. It was on cheap paper, all right? So back off. Okay, so Eliza sees Haley. Slave buys her some more time. And I don't know how plausible this scene is where she's crossing the river with the ice and everything, but I mean, if Sansa could do this in the TV show Game of Thrones Season 6, Eliza did it first. Okay, so Eliza escapes. Tom is taken to an auction in New Orleans to be sold. And then here we go on the right center panel. The woman in the green, that could be Margaret Mitchell's grandmother defending slavery. The slaves get homes and food. What more do they want? It's not that bad. Oh, if you don't know who Margaret Mitchell is, again, we got the internet. Slave guy. Haley decides to trust Tom, lets him roam freely around the ship. And here he meets Ava. Eva or Ava. They go either way. maybe the exposition isn't the best in the world right here, where it says, "Thus begins a warm friendship between the big black man and the little golden girl." Ugh, okay, 1946. And keep in mind, this was progressive in 1946. I'm not sure progressive was a word in 1946 or used like that. I don't know. Okay, and here we go. This is literature. Ava falls in the water. Tom said, how many times in real life do people fall from ships and then get rescued by a stranger diving in to save the potential victim? I mean, did it happen a lot in real life? Because, man, it seems to happen a lot in literature. All right. Ava's father buys Tom for what? $1,400 in 18 something. I mean, I can't even figure that out. That's a lot. That's like a house, more than a house. My house, probably. All right, Tom's happy, and the story ends here. No, of course it doesn't end here, happily ever after, but go back to Eliza, and she's still being hunted. Okay, take a look at this guy in green, because this is important on the next page, I think. The guy in green. Remember the guy in green. All right, here we have action scene. Da-da-da. And then slave traders are chasing the slaves. Slaves fight back. And then the guy in green gets shot. And I guess his name is Mark, because the guy who isn't wearing green says, "They got Mark." And then here are the armed former slaves chasing out the slave hunters. And there's the guy in green, Mark. I think in the book he has a change of heart later after he recovers. And he becomes a Christian. I think a lot of the slavers at the end of the novel become Christian and then renounce slavery. I don't know if that happened so dramatically in real life. I'm sure it happened just like gradually to some extent. Like, hey, wait a minute. Once they start thinking through it, but I don't know if it was just like instant like that. If you've been reading the dialogue too, you can also notice that a lot of the characters are written with a heavy dialect, and that's just how the book was written. I mean, in the book, it wasn't just the slaves who were written with the stereotypical dialect. You had Southern dialects in there too, and it wasn't unusual back then for authors to write in the accents or dialects of their characters. And even if it comes across as racist or bigoted today, it's also difficult to read in the book. It's not really that practical. That's how that's what matters to me. Is it practical or not? Is it practical or not? Now, I was taught when I took my writing courses in college, this is decades ago, but I was taught that you should just state that a certain character or characters spoke with a certain kind of accent or dialect. You didn't actually have to put that in the dialogue. And, all right, there's a lot of Christianity in this book, and that could turn off some readers today. So here you have Tom's learning to read, and he's reading Bible verses to Topsy. And this is during a relatively good time in Tom's life. But it's literature and life. Things are about to take a very bad turn for him, though. And non-religious people or non-spiritual or atheists, however you want to phrase it, a lot of people misunderstand religion and they get snotty about it. They're like, look, God didn't help Tom, did he? Did Tom's relationship with God do him any good? And, jeez. They think that we think God protects us from bad things happening. I mean, they actually believe it. No, that's not it. Okay, now, I don't know how much the book focuses on Topsy or Topsy's voice like the comic book shows, because I'm talking about her singing voice, because comic books focus on what works in a comic book. So I don't remember, just maybe the novel does more with Topsy here, and that's a high point because everything is seemingly going great, but we know it's literature. And then Ava gets sick, and if you read a lot of literature, you know this is going to start an onslaught of bad stuff. All right, so Ava makes her dad promise to free Tom if he dies. And yeah, maybe she should have just freed him right then and just freed them all, you know. And why she have to die first? But she's a kid, and it's 1852, so I'll give her a little bit of break. And then we'll ignore the father's nickname for Ava because, well, okay, if I had truly ignored it, I wouldn't have mentioned it all, but I did kind of want to point it out because there's no way that word is going into a comic book for kids published in 2020. But then again, I did use that word to describe Romeo in a video about Romeo and Juliet, so maybe I shouldn't laugh. Bad stuff is about to happen. Ava dies. Okay. And then the father tells Tom that he'll free him the next day, but of course, unfortunately, he decides to go to the local saloon to drink away his grief, and here we go. There's a fight, of course. Oh, it's a knife fight. I keep saying, this is the second time this has happened in a review of literature. I keep warning people in real life, don't try to break up a fight by yourself unless you know both the combatants and they like you. Otherwise, you're going to get cheap-shotted. And in this scene, he gets stabbed, and then he dies, and then his grieving wife refuses to free Tom. Instead, she's selling him and other slaves in the house, and this just gets worse. And of course, now he gets sold to this greasy guy, Simon Legree. Even the white people whisper his name behind his back. He's the richest and the meanest. Richest. I guess he's the type that dresses down for everything just to show that he can. Okay. And how did she get that knife? I mean, stabbing herself, it's a bad way to go, too. And Tom prevents her and then tries to lift everyone's spirits, and then gets beaten for it. And then we have the forbidden word. And I'm not going to say it or highlight it, but I'm not editing it out either. It is part of the book, and it's part of the comic book, and it's part of the culture of slavery back then. And pretending it didn't happen doesn't help anybody. And the comic book doesn't glorify the word. I mean, come on, trying to be adults about it. All right, now we see Tom's original owner still can't afford him back, so Chloe's going to try to raise money to help buy him back. And Shelby might be thought of by some as a good slave owner, but he's still, a slave owner, and we'll get to that later. And the comic, here we go, the comic portrays the horrors of the Legree plantation, and it's a little less positive than the one portrayed in Gone with the Wind. Tom's coping as best as he can, and here's the line that Tom doesn't cross. All right? He won't whip, he won't strike another human being. And Legree says, on the very right there, I own you body and soul. And Tom says, my soul ain't yours. That's something you can't buy. This is what a lot of non-religious people or people who mock God don't understand, or they understand but just mock it anyways. When we say you can't really harm me, we're talking about our souls, not our bodies. We harm our own souls. And maybe it's not as simple or as easy as what I'm saying. Okay, I'm supposed to review a comic book. Okay, but the book itself, heavily influenced by Christianity. All right, so Tom's really beaten really badly, worse than the comic book shows. And the next page is interesting. I mean, it's all interesting, but you know what I mean. Legree tells Tom to get on his knees. Tom refuses. And it makes sense. Who do you kneel for? Okay? There's no king here. And really, there's no human king on earth. Who are you going to kneel for? You don't kneel for any human. You don't kneel for any cause. Who do you kneel for? See, this book understands it. And then, switching gears real quick. I got to talk fast. I'm trying to keep it under a certain time. I'm not going to make it. All right. Two female slaves who can pass for white decide to try to escape. All right, so they hide up in an attic that's supposed to be haunted. And they hide out while Legree, I should learn how to pronounce his name. And they're hunting the area. They think the two women have already gone to the swamps. And so he's about to question Tom because, he's Tom. And this probably isn't going to go well for Tom. And then ghosts. And see, I didn't get to this part. I'm wondering how this is written in the book. Because this just seems really a strange scene to have in a novel that's known for its harshly accurate portrayal of slavery. So this just doesn't seem plausible. I probably should read that scene, but this is a review of the comic book and how it tells the story. And then Tom takes such a vicious beating here, the panel won't even show it. You've got the shadow and the red background. It leaves it to the reader's imagination. And then, of course, now Shelby shows up to buy his favorite slave back. And there'd be some books where the benign slave owner shows up just in the nick of time to save Tom, but this is not that kind of book. And then Tom dies, and he says he's going to a place better than Kentucky. Well, that could be a lot of places, but we know what he means. And I'm kidding about Kentucky. I have nothing against Kentucky. And then one of the slaves said, we didn't mean it. The master put the devil in us. And I understand that, okay? That's what I meant earlier. Tom never let the master put the devil in him, okay? Tom didn't let his soul be possessed by the demons of fear or rage or despair. He kept his soul. And then he takes a sucker punch to the chin, and the audience cheers. I think this is the one time in the comic book, where the recipient of a violent act has a comical expression on his face after he gets punched. And then, of course, Shelby frees the slaves, and a lot of characters in the book turn to Christianity. And he says at the end, no race or religion on the face of the earth was meant to enslave another, was not meant to. And of course not. But, those snakes and those demons in your head, they get stuck in there so that we can rationalize a lot of bad stuff if we're not careful. All right, the snakes and the demons, they talk us into rationalizing violence or cruelty. And luckily, there's a template that we can use that helps us to resist and avoid and push away those snakes and demons when they come after you. All right, so next, we have this biography of Harriet Beecher Stowe, if you believe it's accurate. And that's it. Well, like I said, I gotta get through this. So that's it, and whew, that's a lot of pages, a lot of rambling on my part. I hope it made sense. I'll find out later. I think this comic book did a pretty good job of telling a difficult story. And I don't know what the comic book left out, and it's like I said, so if you've read all of Uncle Tom's Cabin, please let me know what you think. How accurate is it? What does it leave out? If you enjoyed this review, please like and subscribe so that I know whether or not I should make more. All right, that's it. That's all I got. Thanks for watching.